Welcome! NOAA has just issued its October 2018 Global Climate Report, and this video is a summary of their results. Here's a map of the global temperatures indicating where records have been set over the last month. Dark blue represents an area where a new low temperature record was set. The somewhat lighter blue is much colder than average temperatures. The very light blue is colder than average. White is near average. Pink is warmer than average. A darker pink much warmer than average. And a dark red is a new high temperature record. For October, the average temperature was 0.86 degrees centigrade above the 20th century average. And that basically means that October was the second warmest October on record. We have 0 pixels with a new cold temperature set. We only have 8 pixels where it was much cooler than average. We have hundreds of pixels where it was much warmer than average. We have 86 pixels where new high temperature records were set. So basically we still have a strongly warming world. Well, the time plots of the temperature for the land and the ocean in the northern and southern hemisphere all show exactly the same story, in that October of 2018 was the second warmest October on record. Here's a plot of global temperatures over the last 130 years, and you can see that we have to go back to December of 1984 since we had a month that was below the 20th century average temperature. So we have to go back over 33 years before you will have experienced a month that was below the 20th century average. October did hold one surprise for us. The low temperature records actually outpaced the high temperature records for the first time for a very long time. In October we had 2,891 record highs set compared with 3,421 record lows. The ratio is 0.85 to 1, and that's been more like 2.2 to 1. So that's quite a change around. Year to date, however, the record highs are still beating out the record lows by a factor of over 2 to 1. There were 94,819 record highs and 45,859 record lows. So that would still indicate that we have a warming world. Here's my matrix of month by month temperature rankings. This is the rank of the month at the time the data was taken. I've marked October of 2018 as a number 2. But it's coming fairly clear from this plot that 2018 is going to be either the 4th or the 5th warmest year on record, and so we'll have had the 5 warmest years on record in the last 5 years. So much for the coming of a little ice age. So first let's take a look at the upper atmosphere. We'll start with the lower troposphere, and we only have the UAH measurements this time around. They say that the anomaly above the average is 0.2 degrees centigrade. That made October the 9th warmest October on record, and gives a decadal warming trend of 0.15 degrees centigrade, which is very similar to that of the surface measurements. So contrary to all the propaganda you hear, the satellite data is showing a strong warming trend. Next, let's deal with the mid-troposphere. We have 4 results to choose from here. Unfortunately, they don't seem to agree that well. We have everything from 0.15 degrees centigrade anomaly to 0.25 degrees centigrade anomaly. And that gives us a range of October's record being between the 11th and 17th warmest on record. So it's about the middle of the pack. But their warming trends are all also very similar to the result from the lower troposphere, showing a strong warming trend of between 0.12 and 0.18 degrees centigrade per decade. Lastly, let's take a look at the stratosphere. Here we have a cooling situation. The anomaly that is recorded by these two groups is between 0.44 and 0.48 degrees centigrade cooling. That puts it as the 6th coolest October on record. Both show a uniform cooling trend of about 0.32 degrees centigrade per decade. That is a unique signature of the effect of greenhouse gases. So let's take a quick look at the continental United States. Alaska recorded its warmest temperatures for October ever, with 9 degrees Fahrenheit above average. We had cool areas in the mid part of the country and warm in the southeast. Texas got record rainfall. while Hurricane Michael impacted the Florida Panhandle with winds of over 155 miles an hour, causing 45 deaths. Both Puerto Rico and Hawaii had some rain, in fact so much in Hawaii that it caused major flooding. Let's look at some more detailed maps for the continental United States. On the left you have the average temperature, and you can see the southeast was particularly warm, and you can see that wide swath of cold temperatures through the middle part of the country. If you go over to the precipitation map, that cold area corresponds to the locations where they got heavy rain over that period, including some record rainfall stretching all the way from Texas up into the Great Lakes. Let's next turn to the Northern Hemisphere sea ice extent for October of 2018. As you can see from this plot, it was the third lowest October sea ice extent on record. Next we'll take a look at the Southern Hemisphere sea ice extent for October, and this was the fifth lowest on record and the third consecutive year with below average sea ice extent around Antarctica. Let's take a look at the status of El Nino La Nina cycle, the ENSO cycle. Here's the data and the forecast models. You can see we're not quite at El Nino conditions as yet. That's likely to happen in December. But the new thing about this forecast is that all the models are showing that we will sustain those sorts of conditions all the way through to the middle of the summer of next year. So that forebodes for high temperatures for the beginning part of 2019. Let's take a look at what the sun is doing. This is not part of the NOAA forecast, but I'm going to put it in anyway because the sun interests me. This is the 13-year plot of solar activity, yellow being daily, blue being monthly averaged, and red being a 13-month averaged running mean. And as you can see, we're well past solar maximum and we're well down into the decay phase of the cycle and approaching solar minimum. Now, the Solar Influences Data Center puts out two models of what they expect the solar cycle to do. This was my forecast last month, and I would normally say I see no reason to change it, but I do now, and I'll talk about that in more detail in a second. But let's take a look at what their models say, and you can see they have two models here. One has a long low solar minimum, which is what I was betting on, and the other one has an early onset of solar cycle 25. And so if that early onset occurs, then there's a very different picture for the timing of the next cycle. So what makes me doubt my original forecast? Well, it's this little guy up here. It's a high latitude reverse polarity sunspot region that appeared on the 11th of November. That is precisely what you would expect for the onset of a new cycle. But then lo and behold, 6 days later we get a second one. So what we would expect, if this in fact is a harbinger of the new cycles, there would be more of these over the coming months. They would steadily get larger and more long-lived, as there were fewer and shorter-lived old cycle regions nearer the equator. But if this is the onset of solar cycle 25, then this last cycle, cycle 24, was very short, and that is usually a harbinger of a much increased level of solar activity. If that's the case, then all this talk of a grand solar minimum goes out the window. So in summary then, October of 2018 was the second warmest October on record. We've had 405 consecutive months with above average temperatures. We currently have ENSO neutral conditions, but it's trending towards an El Nino in December. The sun is currently quiet, but the first signs of solar cycle 25 may be appearing. So until next time, goodbye.